Menglong's mother vanishes after demanding justice. What really happened? Was her disappearance a tragic accident? Or a chilling warning to silence anyone who dares to speak the truth about her son's death? The mystery has left fans in shock and the industry trembling. Tonight, Red Carpet Revealed takes you deep inside the shadows to uncover what they don't want you to know. The morning she disappeared, the streets were unusually quiet. A thin mist hung over Shanghai, and the world still seemed to be waking when Menglong's mother stepped out of her modest apartment building, clutching a worn leather satchel. Inside, according to close friends, were papers and diaries belonging to her late son, fragments of a truth she had sworn to protect after his sudden death. She moved with the weight of grief, but also with the determination of someone who had chosen not to be silenced. That would be the last time she was seen. Weeks, she had been a thorn in the side of powerful figures, appearing at vigils, giving trembling but fiery interviews, demanding accountability from the industry that had consumed her son. While officials spoke in vague platitudes of respecting privacy and agencies tried to bury the scandal, she stood alone before cameras, her voice breaking but unyielding. "My son did not choose death. He was driven to it. And I will not stop until those responsible are held to account." Those words, broadcast live and later shared millions of times, transformed her from a grieving mother into a symbol of defiance. Fans called her the last voice of you, praising her courage to stand where others bowed. But symbols, as history has often shown, are dangerous. The stronger her voice grew, the more enemies she made. And then, on a gray morning when the city was still half asleep, she vanished. Neighbors recall strange details from those final days. A pair of unmarked cars parked near her building, their engines idling late into the night. Two unfamiliar men lingering by the entrance, pretending to check their phones but never going inside. One neighbor even remembers seeing her argue with a suited man at her door, her voice sharp, his calm too calculated. She had been restless, friends said. Of being followed, of her phone acting strangely, of messages arriving late, some never at all. But she pressed on, insisting that the truth was worth any cost. By noon, when she failed to appear for a scheduled meeting with a journalist, concern turned to panic. Her phone went unanswered. By evening, her apartment was empty, her belongings undisturbed, her satchel gone. A missing persons report was filed, but authorities described it merely as a disappearance under investigation. Days passed with no updates. Weeks followed, and still nothing. Yet what made her vanishing truly terrifying were the details that surfaced afterward. Security cameras near her home, which should have captured her departure, were said to have malfunctioned at the very hour she left. The elevator CCTV in her building showed only static. The last confirmed sighting was a blurry clip from a corner shop, her figure walking past, head lowered, satchel clutched close. Behind her, just out of focus, two shadowy figures trailed. Speculation ignited instantly. Fans, already suspicious after the attack on Yu's parents months earlier, believed this was no accident. She carried evidence, one fan posted. And now she is gone. Hashtags like "Where I Saw Mother" and "Protect the Truth" surged to the top of trending lists. Candlelight vigils quickly transformed into protests. Orders demanding answers. Posters appeared across cities, her photo beside her son's. The words "First you, now his mother. Who's next?" Officials downplayed the case, calling it an ongoing search. But their vagueness only fueled anger. Journalists trying to investigate reported sudden visits from authorities, warnings not to spread unfounded speculation. Articles vanished from websites within hours of publication. One reporter even claimed his computer files on the case had been remotely deleted. The message was clear: stop digging. The world refused. For fans, her disappearance felt like the fulfillment of her own prophecy. In one of her final speeches at a memorial vigil, she had told the crowd, "If something happens to me, remember, it was not by choice. Remember that silence is what they want." Those words now echoed with haunting weight, transforming grief into determination. If she had indeed been silenced, then her voice would live on in those who had heard her. Theories multiplied. Some whispered she had been abducted by agency-linked enforcers, her satchel confiscated before she could reveal its contents. Believed she was forced into protective custody under the guise of safety, hidden away so her voice could no longer fuel the protests. A more chilling theory suggested she had been taken abroad against her will, erased from public life altogether. None of these could be confirmed. But the absence of truth was itself an answer. Something powerful was being concealed. In the weeks following her disappearance, the apartment became a shrine. Fans left flowers at her door. Handwritten notes to the walls, "You are not alone, for you, for you, for truth," inside. Relatives described an eerie stillness. Her clothes hung untouched. Her tea sat cold on the counter. And in her study, pages of used diary lay scattered. Some with highlighted passages. Others with sticky notes in her handwriting. One note simply read, "Evidence must not die." The effect of her vanishing rippled far beyond China. National media seized on the story, framing it as yet another chapter in a chilling saga of silencing. In Seoul, candlelight marches bore her image alongside her son's. In Tokyo, activists demanded independent investigations. In London, human rights groups declared her disappearance a human rights emergency. The outcry was deafening. But from the very institutions that should have spoken, there was only silence. And so, of this expose closes on a haunting truth. Menglong's mother, who had dared to demand justice for her son, vanished into thin air. No body. No answers. No closure. Only questions, whispers, and the echo of her final words, "If something happens to me, remember, it wasn't an accident." What really happened to Menglong's mother? Who took her? And above all, what secrets did she carry in that satchel? So dangerous that she could not be allowed to walk free? The weeks after her disappearance were marked not by clarity but by confusion. Rumors filled the silence left by the authorities. Every day seemed to bring a new theory, a new piece of supposed evidence, a new voice claiming to know what had happened. None of it led to her. The longer she remained missing, the more the mystery deepened, and the more the world became convinced that her vanishing was not chance but consequence. Police maintained the narrative of a missing person case. Investigation seemed hollow. Search efforts were minimal. Appeals for public assistance lacked urgency. Surveillance footage that could have traced her steps beyond the corner shop was said to be corrupted. And when pressed by journalists, officials dismissed concerns as public hysteria. That dismissal ignited more fury than reassurance. Hysteria had driven the crowds into the streets. It was because the silence of those in power had left them with nothing else. Fans refused to be passive. Online communities formed what they called truth squads, scouring her last known routes, analyzing every second of the surviving CCTV footage. Some claimed to have identified the two shadowy figures who followed her, linking them to men known for private security work with powerful entertainment agencies. Others insisted they had traced her phone signal briefly to a highway on the outskirts of the city before it went dead. None of this was officially confirmed, but to the fans, the patterns were undeniable. Theories spread like wildfire. One insisted she had been abducted and held in a secret facility, her satchel seized before she could release its contents. Another claimed she had been forced into exile, taken abroad under a false identity. A darker possibility whispered through online forums suggested she might already be dead, her silence purchased with blood. Each theory was terrifying. But the worst part was that none of them could be dismissed outright. Journalists brave enough to keep digging described an atmosphere of intimidation. One reporter confided to Red Carpet revealed that she had received anonymous calls warning her to stop writing fairy tales. Another claimed her sources dried up overnight. They had been silenced all at once. The deeper they searched, the more they encountered walls, missing files, cooperative officials, sudden technical failures. Pattern too familiar, echoing the suppression of Yu's own suicide note before it leaked. Yet the very attempt to erase his mother only elevated her. Around the world, her face appeared on banners, murals, and posters. She was no longer just Menglong's mother, she had become a global symbol of resistance. Protesters carried her image through the streets of Beijing, Tokyo, London, and New York. Her voice, preserved in recordings of her speeches, played on loudspeakers. "My son did not choose silence. And neither will I." Each time those words echoed, crowds erupted in chants of defiance. The entertainment industry could not escape the shadow of the scandal. Agencies saw plummeting stock values, boycotts of shows, and mass cancellations of concerts tied to implicated figures. Whispered contracts that profited from sudden tragedies came under scrutiny. Lawmakers, pushed by public fury, and discussing legislation aimed at reforming how artists were treated. For the first time in decades, the machine that had seemed invincible was trembling. Still, the darker forces did not rest. Followers who had stepped forward describing Yu's final months reported harassment. Families of protesters claimed they were visited by strangers warning them to stop. Social media accounts sharing details of the mother's case were deleted within hours. And yet, the harder the system tried to silence, the louder the resistance grew. Fans had learned to adapt, using code words and symbolic images to keep the story alive. A single candle emoji became a weapon of defiance, representing both Yu and his missing mother. As time dragged on with no answers, international organizations stepped in. Human rights groups declared her case a violation of fundamental freedoms. Amnesty petitions collected millions of signatures, demanding independent investigations. A coalition of journalists from multiple countries began a joint task force, pooling resources to track her disappearance. One of their first reports, they revealed that Yu's mother had been scheduled to meet with a foreign reporter the day she vanished, and that the documents she carried may have included names of individuals directly tied to Yu's exploitation. If true, the timing of her vanishing was no coincidence. The act was seismic. Suddenly, Yu's mother was no longer a missing woman but the centerpiece of a conspiracy too large to ignore. Her disappearance became the proof Yu's suicide note had warned of. "They will not let me rest. They will not let you hear me." Words had become prophecy, fulfilled in the fate of the very person who dared to carry them forward. What she carried in that satchel remains one of the greatest unanswered questions. Some claim it contained copies of Yu's contracts, evidence of clauses that profited agencies upon his death. Others insist it held personal letters, recordings, perhaps even names of those directly responsible for pushing him to despair. A chilling rumor, whispered by an insider, suggested the satchel contained insurance documents showing millions paid out to agencies after Yu's death. If that evidence ever reached the public, it would destroy careers, reputations, perhaps even entire companies. The more the system tried to erase her, the more the movement grew. Fans called themselves the guardians of the satchel, to uncover what she carried even if she never returned. Artists began dedicating songs and performances to her memory. Filmmakers quietly began work on documentaries about her disappearance, framing it not only as a tragedy but as a turning point in the fight against exploitation. And then, the unthinkable, a message surfaced. Anonymous, unverifiable, but too specific to ignore. A handwritten note scanned and shared online, allegedly smuggled out of a detention center. It read simply, "I am alive. Will not let me speak. Protect you. Protect the satchel." Handwriting experts debated its authenticity, some declaring it hers, others dismissing it as forgery. But to the fans, enough to reignite hope. Whether real or not, the message carried truth. Her story, like her son's, could not be erased. Yu Menglong's mother stood where few dared to stand, against the silence of power, against the shadows that consumed her son. Courage, she vanished. No body has been found. No evidence produced, no answers given. But absence itself has become proof that refuses to heal. A question that refuses to die. They silenced Yu with contracts. They tried to erase his scars with fire. They beat his parents when they spoke. And now, his mother has disappeared into the void. Yet what those forces fail to understand is that erasure does not kill memory. Disappearance does not kill truth. Silence does not kill resistance. Across the world, her voice still echoes in recordings of her speeches, in the trembling lines of her son's diary, in the satchel she carried that may never be found. Unanswered question has become a banner. Each vanishing has become a rallying cry. From Beijing to Seoul, from Tokyo to London, from New York to Paris, millions now carry the torch she once held alone. Yu Menglong's story was never meant to end in silence, because silence has already been broken. His mother's disappearance has not erased her, it has multiplied her voice. She has become more than one woman. She is every mother who refuses to bury injustice, parent who refuses to let their child be forgotten, every truth seeker who refuses to surrender. So the question remains, haunting, relentless, what really happened to Yu Menglong's mother? Until the answer comes, her absence will speak louder than any official denial. Fans who carried candles through the streets, who sang Yu's songs under the night sky, who stood outside hospitals and painted her image on walls, thank you. To the whistleblowers and journalists who risked their safety to keep the story alive, thank you. To the families who mourned with her, now mourn for her, thank you. This expose belongs to you. It belongs to the millions who turned grief into defiance. Silence into a storm. Red carpet revealed stands with you. We will not stop asking. We will not stop searching. And we will not let her vanish from memory. Together. Protect Yu's truth. Protect his mother's courage. Protect the light they tried to bury. They can erase a body. They can erase a voice. But they will never erase the truth.